David Axelrod remains loyal to Barack Obama, and the factor believes loyalty is a good thing. However, clearly the president's having some problems, and that's what I want to talk with Mr. Axelrod about tonight. He joins us from New York City. So rather than you and I debating policy, which we've done before, and that's fun, but I want to try to understand the thinking of the president. I'm a simple man, as you know, but I don't understand a bunch of stuff, and I'm hoping that you can clarify it for me and the audience. First of all, let's take General Flynn, Leon Panetta, Robert Gates. You know them all. They're patriots. Would you say they're patriots?
I don't know General Flynn. I certainly know the other two, and I would say, yes, they're patriots. Okay.
Well, General Flynn, Defense Intelligence Agency, working directly. Maybe you were not there at the time, but he's a patriot. So all three are patriots. They all say the president does not have an effective policy overall to fight the jihad. So the first question becomes, does the president care what these three men think, and why isn't he following their advice?
Well, first of all, Bill, let me say, this is a conservative's worst nightmare. I've taken over your studio in New York. I think when word spreads, there's going to be absolute panic out there. Look, first of all, there are a lot of people who are patriots. I think General Allen, who's advising the president, is a patriot. Lots of folks are patriots. I think we ought to dismiss the notion that if you disagree on a strategy, that someone is a patriot and someone else isn't a patriot. And I certainly would dismiss the notion, Bill, because you're asking me as someone who knows the president, that the president doesn't care or doesn't feel a sense of urgency. I know Karl Rove is around here somewhere. I saw him earlier. I think Karl could attest to the fact that any person who sits in that chair, anyone who has to who listens to the daily intelligence reports in the morning, who is responsible for the lives of American service people, intelligence officers, and who feels a sense of responsibility for the safety of the American people, has to feel a sense of urgency, and the president certainly does feel a sense of urgency, but he may not agree with the...
But I want to know what the thinking is. According to these three guys, the strategy is confused, it's muddled, and let's give some concrete examples. We learned over the weekend that ISIS is spreading to Libya and to Egypt. On the president's watch, ISIS gained thousands of miles of territory in Syria and Iraq, taking over the second largest city in Iraq, Mosul. When asked about it, the president said ISIS is the JV. Clearly embarrassing, clearly made a mistake. And I don't understand why these mistakes are happening, Mr. Axelrod.
Bill, let me ask you something. That comment about ISIS being the JV, did that come after they took over Mosul? And I don't think so. I think you've got your ordering.
They were on the move.
You've got your ordering wrong on that point. Look, I think that clearly not just American intelligence, but intelligence around the world was taken aback by the quick movements of ISIS. The reason that it became possible was, of course, because our ally, Prime Minister Maliki, didn't do what he should have done, which is to forge a pluralistic governing structure there.
You can make the argument, Mr. Axelrod, but you can also make the argument that Barack Obama pulled his soldiers out of there, and his military advisors, most of them, said, don't do it, because you're going to leave a vacuum that was filled by ISIS. But, all right, again, so what are you saying to me? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I disagree. Excuse me?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Barack Obama doesn't see, at this juncture in history, he doesn't see that his strategy to fight ISIS and the other jihadists is failing. He doesn't see that. He believes it's succeeding. Is that what you're telling me?
I believe, well, look, I'm not in the White House right now. I only know what the president has said publicly, and I think it's what he believes, which is, he said from the beginning that this was going to take a long time to degrade ISIS.
But it doesn't take a long time. It's 40,000 of them.
Wait a second. That we needed to involve partners in the region, that we needed to build a coalition, that America couldn't be and shouldn't be the point of the spear, that we had to have a functioning government in Iraq, because the problem before it...
10-year-old girls are getting raped and killed. People are getting set on fire and beheaded. You can theorize all you want. We have a disagreement.
And what do
you and the president believe that it's working?
What do you think the answer is, though? I mean, let's make you president of the United States for a second. what your viewers may want.
I put forth the answer that you have to basically get a ground force. There's 40,000 of these people. Go in and kill them. It should be an international force, but this should have been convened months ago. And the president keeps looking away from the situation, saying, oh, we'll get it done. It's not enough. It's spreading. The three top guys, Panetta, Gates, and Flynn, say there's no strategy. It should be concerning.
Do you think that, let me ask you something.
I got a whole bunch of other stuff.
Have you posited your theory about how we should send ground forces in to Secretary Gates? Do you think he agrees with that?
Yes. I do believe that they all agree there should be an international ground force.
I think there is a great deal of debate as to the efficacy of putting in ground forces, and certainly American troops, and with the American people there is. I mean, some of the same voices who are calling for this were the same voices who were calling for us to invade Iraq in the first place.
It's not an occupation situation. It's a confrontation situation.
But the question is, what then? What happens then, Bill? Are we going to stay there in perpetuity?
What happens then is...
Are we going to stay in perpetuity?
No. We kill them, and then we leave. And if we have to go back, we kill them, and then we leave.
And your assumption is that those 40, and that's it. There's no more anywhere else.
Well,
that this doesn't inflame the situation, that they don't have recruits coming in. This doesn't inflame. Does it add to our security, or does it detract from our security?
You really want to use the word inflame after the Jordanian guy got set on fire? Is that the word you want to use? Come on. All right, I got to get to this. Prayer breakfast.
Yes.
Roll the tape on it.
You don't use the word crusade, number one, in any context right now. It's too fraught. And the week after a pilot is burned alive and a video shown, you don't lean over backwards to be philosophical about the sins of the fathers.
You don't get more left-wing than Miss Mitchell. And here's my question. Here's my question. Did President Obama know, in your opinion, when he said this, made a comparison to the Crusades, that all hell was going to break loose, pardon the pun? Did he know?
I think he knew what he was saying, and he knew that it was provocative. Absolutely, I think he knew that.
Then why would he do it?
Because his point is that we have a quarter of the world's population are Islamic, and the vast majority, the vast majority of them have nothing to do with extremism. And his point is, let us not define that entire quarter of the planet by the actions of extremists. Let's isolate the extremists, just as we wouldn't blame every Christian for the acts of some Christians, every Jew for the acts of some Jews.
He wanted to make that point, and he used that form. Okay, now I understand. Bo Bergdahl, okay? He's going to be charged as a deserter. And now you're facing a president who trades 5 top Taliban terrorist commanders for a deserter. Did he know that might happen, in your opinion? Do you think this is going to become a huge story? Did the president understand the implications of trading a deserter for 5 top Taliban commanders?
I don't know that anybody had designated him as a deserter at the time.
The Army did before the trade was made.
Then what was the investigation about?
The investigation was to certify that he was a deserter.
Oh, I see. So
this was the second investigation. Well, no, there was an initial investigation after he left his unit, and there were a number of U.S. soldiers killed looking for him. There was an investigation, and the conclusion was he was a deserter.
Bill,
the president had to know that.
The practice of the United States is that we don't leave anybody behind. We may hold them accountable when they come back, but we don't leave them behind.
All right, so you think he still thinks it was a good deal? Do you still think it was a good deal?
That was what provoked
that was the explanation.
Decision.
Does he still think it's a good deal, do you think?
I haven't talked to him about it. I think that he would stand behind what he's done.
All right. Now we're going to take a break, and we're going to go domestic. Isn't this fun?
Loving it, man.
Okay. The name of the book is Believer, and we'll have more of Mr. Axelrod. Story, a new book called Believer by David Axelrod, very close friend and advisor to President Obama. So let's begin this segment with race. You write in your book about Reverend Wright, and it was only after, and you point this out, it was only after Wright attacked President Obama in Philadelphia that the president repudiated him, and you made that clear in the book. So for years, Obama was a close friend of Jeremiah Wright. We all know that he's a radical preacher. Then there's Al Sharpton, with a defined history of racial provocation and tax problems, big-time tax problems, and Barack Obama has embraced him. I don't understand any of that. Can you explain it?
Well, Reverend Wright was his minister, and obviously the things you call him whatever you call him, and obviously some of the things he said were incendiary, but that wasn't the relationship that the president had with him. That wasn't the those weren't the sermons that the president heard in church. Those weren't the sermons that he regularly delivered. And you know, you should also point out he was a honored U.S. Marine. He was he was an internationally recognized religious leader. So, you know, I think you can characterize him one way or another.
But you characterize him, and you in your own book.
What the president said, what the president did was he criticized and very, very clearly the things that Reverend Wright said.
But only after.
No, Bill, I was there in Philadelphia when he criticized him.
Right, but it was only after Jeremiah Wright came out and called Obama a flack.
No, it wasn't. Again, you got your ordering wrong. He didn't
I'm reading your book.
That.
I'm taking it right out of there.
No, you're not. I wrote the book. You're not taking it out of there, and you're not taking it out of events. And I say this respectfully.
Sure.
He gave a speech in Philadelphia after Reverend Wright's comments became known. Reverend Wright
That's
then
exactly
attacked
what
him.
I'm saying.
Then Reverend Wright attacked him for the speech he made in Philadelphia later in a tour around the country, and said and repeated some of the offensive things. It wasn't the attack on Obama. He repeated some of the offensive things for which Obama had criticized him. And at that point, the president said, I'm not going to continue this.
Right.
And he
Let's get to
left
Sharpton.
that church.
Sharpton, you know, everybody knows the resume, all right? Why? Why would and I have to say, I was invited by the president to the Brothers Keeper announcement at the White House. I was honored to be there. I think it's a great program, the Brothers Keeper program. There's Sharpton, okay? And I'm saying to myself, okay, it's okay for him to be there, but now it's morphed into Sharpton's there more than 80 times. He's got a signed picture that says, to my fellow warrior for justice. I mean, are you kidding me with Al Sharpton?
Bill, you don't decide, and I don't decide who leaders in a community are. Al Sharpton is widely regarded as a leader within the African American community.
Do you think the president respects him? Do you think the president respects Al Sharpton?
Well, I think he respects his leadership on some of these issues, on these civil rights issues. Yes, I do.
He owes millions of dollars to the IRS. His organizations owe millions of dollars. Is there any other American in the White House who owes millions of dollars to the IRS?
I don't know. I haven't gone through the tax returns
but
of
isn't
people
that
coming
strange?
to the White House.
Isn't that strange?
No, I don't think it's strange. There are people who've had... Look, Donald Trump has, I'm sure, been in the White House. He's gone through bankruptcy proceedings. He's had financial problems. That didn't impeach him from being a visitor in the White House.
But it wasn't a debt to the federal government. See, I can't understand the Al Sharpton thing. I really can't understand it. There are so many other good civil rights leaders, not polarizing, not anti-cop, not tax dodgers. So many. And why this guy has reached that pinnacle, I don't know. All right, let's get to the economy.
Yeah,
You'll well remember this soundbite.
Mm-hmm.
Roll it.
Okay.
The problem is that the way Bush has done it over the last 8 years, driving up our national debt from $5 trillion for the first 42 presidents, number 43 added $4 trillion by his lonesome. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
All right, number 44, President 44 has added $8 trillion almost in 6 years. I don't understand. He was so against adding to the debt.
Let me try and enlighten you on this point, since you don't understand.
I don't understand.
There was an intervening event. It was called the Great Recession, the biggest economic catastrophe.
What about 9/11? Didn't that intervene on George
economic
Bush?
Catastrophe. Look, what happened under President Bush was that we had two huge tax cuts and a war that would cost trillions of dollars.
Two
the first
wars.
time in history. 2 wars. You're right.
Two
I'm sorry.
wars.
2 wars. First time in history that we had tax cuts at the same time that we were waging war. And there were people, John John McCain and others who warned that it was fiscal madness. It was fiscal madness, and then
but President Obama knew that when he made that statement about it being unpatriotic to run up that debt, and he's run up more debt than all the other presidents combined.
What I'm saying is that that wasn't a mandatory exercise for President Bush to cut taxes in the middle of a war. That wasn't a mandatory exercise. The fact is that the Great Recession was something that the president walked into. When we met before he even took office, the economist said to us, this is going to add trillions of dollars to the debt, and it did add trillions of dollars to the debt.
But now we're out of the recession, and he's still adding. He's going to add $3 more trillion by the time he leaves office. We're out of the recession.
Bill, he's steadily cut these deficits to the point where
it's not a matter of deficit, it's debt.
Yes, I know. That's how you add to the debt, Bill. That's how you add to the debt.
But he doesn't have to add to it with all the tax money coming in. He's got more tax money coming in than any other time in history, more than $3 trillion this year. I don't know. I don't get it.
And look, the entire economy is growing, and as a percentage of the economy, the debt is about a third of what, or less of what it was when he. I'm sorry, the deficits are about a third of what they were when he took office. So he's steadily chipped away from that. So, but listen, I agree with you though that it is not wise policy to cut taxes when you're at war, and I don't think future presidents will do that.
I don't know if it's wise policy to raise taxes when take-home pay is going down as it has under President Obama. Last question. I believe, and I think I'm right on this, I'll probably be wrong on everything else that I said to you tonight, that his main goal as President of the United States, what he wants to be remembered for, is social justice. Yes?
No, I think I think there are a lot of things, but I think the main thing that he'll be remembered for is leading the country through the worst economic crisis in history. He'll be remembered for bringing the troops home from Afghanistan and most of the troops home from Iraq. 180,000 troops when he took office. Most of them are home today. He'll be remembered for health reform. He'll be remembered for financial reform. He'll be remembered for ending discriminatory practices against gays and lesbians. And he'll be remembered for trying to lead us forward to deal with this issue of flat wages and economic immobility that now every Republican is talking about as well. And the fact that they are, Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney, and the entire Republican field is talking about it, I think is a tribute to the fact that the president was on the right track in the first place.
All right. Mr. Axelrod, thank you very much. It was very interesting to talk with you.
Well, thank you for reading my book, Bill. I hope your viewers will as well.
Listen, I enjoyed it, and I hope everybody checks it out. And I appreciate your loyalty to your guy.
Well,
as I said in the beginning, loyalty is very important to us. Directly ahead.